Coming up in this episode, Quinten Post makes his first start in a Warrior uniform and Kevin Knox a second goes off for 31 points, but it's not enough as Golden State suffer an agonising defeat in the Summer League semi-finals against the Miami Heat. Plus, the latest on Lauri Markkanen suggests the ball might be in the Warriors' court when it comes to a potential trade. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. About an hour removed here from the end of Golden State's Summer League campaign, an agonising 102-99 defeat to the Miami Heat in the Summer League semi-finals. Disappointing result, obviously, having entered 7-0 in Summer League dating back to the start of the California Classic, where they actually smashed the Heat in that first game of the California Classic. So a massive turnaround for the Heat, and congratulations to them. They'll face the Memphis Grizzlies tomorrow in the championship game. But a disappointing end to what was an exciting and impressive campaign from the Warriors. There's no doubt about that. And a number of players put their best foot forward, showcase their skill sets to be able to. Some of them will get a gig with the Warriors come training camp and into next season. Others might get an opportunity elsewhere based on what they did in Summer League. Before I get into some of those individual performances from today's game, just a couple of, just outlining the game, I guess, and a couple of team statistics from this one. So the Warriors were down 22-14 in the first quarter, ended up going on a 15-0 run to all of a sudden make it 29-22. And from there, they led for the majority of the game going forward. They even got out to a double-digit lead in the third quarter, led by 5 entering the fourth, and unfortunately just an offensive explosion from the Heat in the final period, scoring 37 points. Of course, these Summer League games, 10-minute quarters, so 37 points in 10 minutes. Disappointing, particularly given how good the Warriors have been defensively over the course of Summer League here. So it was a disappointing end, and there was some crucial plays down the stretch where the Warriors didn't quite execute, including a couple of turnovers in the final minute. The overall turnover battle, the Warriors produced 15 turnovers. Miami had 8, so the 7 difference there, that's probably a game-defining statistic, along with the Warriors shooting 8 of 23 from three-point range, so couldn't find the range from beyond the arc when it mattered most in this semi-final. So ultimately disappointing, but certainly still some impressive signs throughout Summer League and in this game from some individuals. Of course, a lot of talk, a lot of hype at the moment around Quinten Post. We'll start with him, even though he only played 15 minutes in this one. He did make his first career start in a Warrior uniform, which is obviously exciting. Bit of a letdown in the first half where he didn't really do a whole lot whatsoever. He had a couple of offensive fouls on moving screens. The only major positive, I think he might have got a couple of offensive rebounds or something. He did have a nice pass to a cutting, I think it was Vescovi, for an assist in the second quarter, I believe it was. That was a nice play, but aside from that, did not take a single shot in the first half. So certainly less aggressive potentially than what he was in his debut on Friday. But the third quarter was impressive. Third quarter, second half, much more aggressive, came out, had quite a few solid plays on both ends of the floor in that third quarter. Was going one-on-one, head-to-head against Kel'el Ware, obviously first-round pick for the Miami Heat. So a good, not litmus test, because it's only a second game in a Warrior uniform, but a good test nonetheless for how he is tracking at the moment against a talented young player. And it was a fascinating battle, particularly in the third quarter, where I think Post was able to use his strength and experience a few times against Ware, and conversely, Ware was able to use his athleticism on a few occasions as well. Post's first points came at the free throw line, where he kind of posted up Ware and really backed him down, like got in almost to the restricted area, had a layup attempt, miss, and then the ref called the foul, went to the line, made 2 free throws. He had, shortly after that as well, he had a spin move on Pelle Larsson, which was impressive because I spoke about it on last episode. You want to see him be able to use his size and frame more so than just being a perimeter shooter. And the fact that he was able to take advantage of a mismatch in the post and spin away from Larsson for the dunk was quite impressive. He had another dunk on a bit of a broken play as well during the third quarter. Got to the free throw line on another occasion in the second half where he kind of pump faked a 3 and then drove on Ware, got to the line there, nailed 2. And then he had another dunk as well on a pick and roll with Yuri Collins. So 10 points in the second half for him, 10 points in 15 minutes overall. So productive again, even though he didn't attempt a single shot in the first half. But there were certainly some negatives to his game as well. Back on the positives, to finish on the positives, there were quite a few plays in the third quarter where he was able to body up Ware, again, use his strength to be able to defend him well and contest without fouling on a number of occasions. It's just disappointing his final kind of sequence in the game, and the final sequence that it's probably unfair to say we're going to remember him by, but his final sequence, at least of Summer League, and the final sequence until he comes out in a Warrior uniform in a proper game, whether that's probably going to be in preseason or whatever, came in the fourth quarter where he pump faked a 3, kind of hesitated, then took it and airballed it, got nothing but net, but not in the way you want. And then on the other end, he fouled Ware on a mid-range jump shot that he made. So it was an and one on that occasion. So that sequence of airballed 3 into giving up an and one on a mid-range jump shot, not a great finish. But otherwise, I still think there was plenty to be like that third quarter. If you just take that period in a vacuum, that was impressive again on both ends of the floor in terms of being able to attack mismatches, good on the pick and roll, didn't take like that 3-point attempt at the airball in the fourth quarter was the only 3 he took for the game. Defensively as well, again, on most occasions he was able to body up and defend Ware pretty well without fouling. So there is certainly some cause for intrigue with Quinten Post. I think it's hard, again, going back to what I said last episode, it's hard to expect too much more out of a guy who missed the first 6 games of Summer League and then come out in the last 2 games. And it's a very similar situation to Trayce Jackson-Davis, where he was exactly the same. He had a minor injury, came back for the final 2 games, impressed, showed some strong signs, and then, of course, that translated over to a fantastic rookie season with the Warriors. So if Quinten Post can even do half of what Trayce Jackson-Davis did in his rookie year, then the Warriors are probably going to be pretty happy with that result. So plenty to work with. Again, 7-footer with his shooting ability. And more so than that, like he went 2 of 4 on Friday. But more so than that, I think like showed an ability today to be able to work in the pick and roll, to be able to pass a bit, to be able to defend pretty well without fouling. So again, impressive performance from Quinten Post. Certainly a mixed bag. Like there's plenty of negatives in there as well. But otherwise, something to certainly work with for Golden State moving forward. In terms of other individual performances, well, Kevin Knox, the second, really led the way for the Warriors today. 31 points, 12 of 17 shooting, 5 of 10 from 3-point range, had 15 in the first half, and then really got going in the fourth quarter as well. It was really almost a lone offense for the Warriors at a time where the Heat were really exploding offensively, and Knox did his best to try and stifle Miami's comeback effort. Ultimately didn't come to fruition. His performance didn't lead to a win, but still I'm very happy for and excited for Kevin Knox to be able to have this performance in a summer league where he has impressed largely, and I think he's played pretty well for the majority. He does have games where he's like in and out, and his efficiency can be lacking, but I think to finish off with this performance is a good recognition for his summer league and the ability for him as a former top 10 pick, firstly, to come to summer league and actually participate in summer league as a former top 10 pick from 6 years ago. And secondly, to actually accept a role off the bench as well. I mean, he's been playing heavy minutes, played over 30 today, but to accept an invitation to play first and foremost, and then accept a bench role and be productive. I think, again, full recognition to him for doing that, and very happy that he was able to cap off his summer league campaign with a big performance today. I won't reiterate what I've said previously about him. Like, I think he does deserve an opportunity with a good team somewhere rather than the bad NBA teams he's been on in the past, in New York back in the day, and then most recently Detroit and Portland. Will that come with the Warriors? Probably not. But yeah, I don't want to reiterate too much about because I've said all this previously, and I think his performance today was another step into that kind of perspective of him deserving another NBA opportunity somewhere. I just wanted to read out a few of the comments because I posted that video from earlier today on Kevin Knox and me speaking about him in last episode. Just wanted to read out a few comments. And I wanted, especially over the off-season, I do want to get into a bit more reading out what you guys think in the YouTube comments. I think that's important, and it'd be great to continue connecting with you guys. So a few comments in regards to Kevin Knox, because he is quite a divisive player, given, yes, he's impressed here in Summer League, but he is former top 10 pick who's now 6-7 years into his career and is yet to really find an NBA home. So he's quite divisive. First comment here comes from Miko KB. He said, Gee is a better player. In my opinion, he balled out against Brandon Miller last year's Summer League, played well enough to close over Clay in the regular season, and is not a bad shooter at all. I can certainly see your argument, and if I had to bet on whether the Warriors are going to keep Guy Santos or waive him and bring in Kevin Knox, then I'd absolutely back the fact that they'll just keep Santos. Like, I understand that, but I mean, I think you look at Kevin Knox today, and you got to consider to yourself, okay, is Guy Santos going to come out and be able to produce a 30-piece in Summer League? Probably not. But again, I think was it Draymond before Summer League said, it's not about the guys who necessarily score points, because all of these guys in Summer League, unless you're a top pick and a top prospect, like a lot of these guys are fighting to be role players in the NBA. Kevin Knox isn't necessarily going to get the opportunity to go out and score 20, 30 points for the Warriors if he was on the roster next season. So do you want a guy that does more of the little things, can fit more into a role-playing mold? Yeah, you do. And in that scenario, I think Guy Santos is probably a much better fit in that than Kevin Knox. I completely understand that. That doesn't take away from the fact I think Knox deserves another opportunity, but I certainly see your argument. Second one comes from Young Wes 79. Knox is only 24 years old, and yes, I believe Warriors can save his career. And I think maybe he can make the team if Warriors train him to be a defensive player first, him being 6'9" with long arms. We know he can score a bit, and he seems to be a decent rebounder. Again, I think that's one thing you got to remember. Yes, he's coming into his 7th year in the league if he does get another opportunity, but he is only 24 years old. He is still really, really young. And so does that lend itself to a little bit more optimism of what he could potentially get to? And potentially that youth could be used as some kind of an excuse for why he hasn't been able to develop to this point, and again, not necessarily being in good systems either with the Knicks, the Pistons, and the Trailblazers. And the last one as well from the Goblin 513, the last thing we need is a ball hog. I do. I mean, Kevin Knox didn't have an assist today. I do get the ball hog perspective. Now, the facts are there's going to be games like today where he goes for 31 points on 12 of 17, shooting 5-10 from 3, and he looks fantastic, and you think, geez, how does this guy not have an NBA contract yet? But there's probably going to be there's other games as well where he doesn't shoot the ball well, and he goes, 2 of 7, 2 of 9, 1 of 6 from 3-point range. And yes, you might get the ball hog label because he's not afraid to put up shots, that's for sure. And really, it's about the efficiency. For him, if he's efficient like he was today, then absolutely fantastic. And if he's not, does he bring enough else to the table to be impactful and productive? Maybe not. He's a strong rebounder. I'll give him that. He's got the physical tools to be a good rebounder, but isn't necessarily at this stage. And is he a great ball mover in the Warriors style offense? Probably not. So I can certainly see the kind of negatives to Kevin Knox's game and why they wouldn't necessarily translate to the main Warriors roster. Moving on from Kevin Knox, Pat Spencer, another solid game from him, 14 points, 7 assists, 6 of 11 shooting, so really efficient over these last 3 games since he's come back from injury. He will rue a couple of plays late in the final minute where the Heat were up 2 on both occasions. First one, he was cutting baseline. Uri Collins threw what I thought was a pretty good pass, and he just didn't get down and get it. It went down in the play-by-play as a Collins turnover, but I think it was actually more so a Spencer turnover. He just mishandled the pass. Probably would have been a dunk or a layup and tied the game, but again, unfortunately, he mishandled the ball. And then on the following play, Warriors got a stop. Spencer had the ball in the corner, tried to drive baseline on Pelle Larsson, and unfortunately, turned the ball over, tried to kind of got stuck on the baseline, tried to throw it inside, turned the ball over, Heat went up the other end, made a couple of free throws, and from there the game was pretty much done. So a solid outing from Pat Spencer, but otherwise he would certainly be disappointed with a couple of those plays in the final minute. There's no doubt about that. And Daeqwon Plowden, just to finish off, not a great time for him to choose to have his worst game of the entirety of Summer League. Did not make a field goal, 0 of 7 from the floor, 5 points, did rebound the ball well, 8 boards there. And then, of course, at the free throw line in those final seconds, he got fouled on the three-point attempt, could have made all 3, and that would have brought the Warriors within 1. He made the first, then missed the second, and then having missed the second, he purposely missed the third. Unfortunately, Golden State couldn't get the rebound. Heat got it and then sealed the game at the free throw line. So not a great game for Daeqwon Plowden, but otherwise a very impressive Summer League, which obviously rewarded him with a 2-way contract with Golden State. And, I mean, you look at a bunch of these players, like this entire roster almost could come to training camp and be pretty handy to have in training camp, particularly if there's a roster spot up for grabs, depending on if there's a trade or not in the coming weeks or months. So, again, well done to the Warriors Summer League squad. It was exciting to watch them play. Quite a number of impressive players have certainly put their hand up for the Golden State team next season or potentially another opportunity elsewhere. We'll move on to the latest on Lauri Markkanen. NBA insider Mark Stein had a piece earlier today. Now, from an optimistic standpoint, there's probably a quote in here which lends itself to thinking that the ball might be in the Warriors' court here just a little bit. So here's the quote from Mark Stein, who said, "There is a belief in some corners of the league that Utah's interest in Golden State's Brandon Podziemski, in combination with future draft compensation that the Warriors could package with the all-rookie first-team selection, is serious enough that it keeps alive the prospect of a market and trade between now and August 6th. So what I take from that, personally, is that the Warriors have a choice to make. And it is a simple yet complicated choice. Do they want to retain Brandon Podziemski, or are they willing to give him up for Lauri Markkanen? If they are willing, along with the necessary draft capital, they can get Lauri Markkanen, in my opinion, if they are willing to give up Brandon Podziemski. But all the talk, obviously, on pods, coming from majority owner Joe Lacob earlier in the week, where he stated that we think we've got a future all-star on our hands. All the talk is the Warriors want to retain pods, not just, of course, for the on-court element, but the financial element as well, being on a rookie contract for the next 3 years at less than $13 million in total. That's a decision. That's a decision the Warriors are going to have to make. And so it is a simple equation when you basically say, okay, pods or Markkanen. Who do you want? That's the equation. But the decision is so much more complicated when you take into account, particularly the financial aspect, as I just spoke about, where Pods is going to be making less than $5 million a year for the next 3 seasons. And in Markkanen, as I said on last episode, yes, he's making $18 million next season. That's easy enough to be able to match salaries to orchestrate a trade right now. We get that. But as I said on last episode, he could potentially command a max deal of 5 years, $269 million in free agency, in excess of $50 million a year. And then when you combine that with Jonathan Kuminga, probably looking at upwards of $140, maybe upwards of $150 million on his contract extension. Who knows, depending on if there is no extension and he goes into his 4th year and has a great 4th year. Could be looking at a max there as well of his rookie contract, which would be like in line for 5 years, $224, something like that. So we're talking about in excess of $40 million, nearly $45 million for Jonathan Kuminga. And then you take into account the big deal that Steph's on, obviously. Draymond and Wiggins both on mid-20s per season and are on multi-year deals still here. So it's there's plenty to think about from a Warriors standpoint, and much of it is financial. Of course, they've just got themselves out of the second tax apron. They're currently hard capped at the first tax apron. So what they want to do moving forward here, yes, they'll be able to. They're obviously hard capped at the first apron for next season, but beyond that, 2025, 26, all of that is going to come down to the next few weeks here and whether or not they're willing to trade for Lauri Markkanen, what they do elsewhere in terms of Kuminga, Like, if they bring in Markkanen, do they have to try and move on from JK before that? If he looks like he's going to command in excess of $140, $150 million on an extension, do they try and trade Wiggins in that perspective? I think the Wiggins piece is the key here. I do think that if they were to get Markkanen and they said to themselves, okay, we are going to commit to Markkanen and JK, then that means, and I've said this all along, that means Wiggins has to go. Financially, that means he has to go. And I think they would try and do that now rather than wait until, next off-season, where they'd be backed into a corner and they would have to try and get themselves out from a tougher situation then than they are right now. So I do think if there's a Markkanen trade, then it might not be the last trade the Warriors make this offseason. It'll be the biggest, but there could be some after effects from that as well. Stein also reported that the Warriors prefer to trade Kuminga over Pods. That's not surprising. That's the growing sentiment we've heard over the last few days, last couple of weeks here. However, it's the first time that I would say a genuine NBA reporter has stated that from the Warriors side. We have heard previously, Shams earlier in the week stated that the Jazz would prefer Pods over JK. So we understand that externally rival teams value Pods over JK, but this is the first time where a genuine NBA reporter has stated that the Warriors would prefer to trade JK over Pods, which, again, is no surprise given all that external stuff we've heard about rival teams valuing Pods over the last week or so here. Stein also reiterated from Shams' report earlier in the week that the Warriors' current offer is Moses Moody and picks. Now, I do want to, because as part of these reports, we also have to mention, or I also have to mention that the Warriors also need to include more salary than just Moses Moody to get Lauri Markkanen. So it would be let's say Moody, Looney, and GP2, and all the picks, obviously. And I don't think that's nothing. Gary Payton II is a real fan favourite, still the best perimeter defender on the roster. Kevon Looney is, again, stated by Steve Kerr as the moral compass of this team, a fantastic role player over the last few seasons. Yes, had a down year last year, but he's still young enough where you think he might be able to get back to being an impactful piece for you. 3-time NBA champion, big part of the culture in the locker room. Losing those guys isn't nothing. And so when you get these reports from Shams or Stein and it's like, oh, it's Moses Moody and picks. No, hang on a second. It is also GP2 and Looney, which to those externally, to the Utah Jazz or to fans in general, those guys don't necessarily matter too much, and that's why they're not actually involved in these reports or anything. But from a Warriors standpoint, those guys mean something. You can't say that, oh, we're just throwing him in for salary matching purposes. Yes, you are to a degree. You are doing that, and you would do it to get Lauri Markkanen. But you can't say it's nothing, particularly from Peyton being a fan favourite among Dub Nation, and Loon being such a cultural figure and a locker room presence for the Warriors over recent years. And he's a 3-time champion. 3-time champion with the Warriors. So that's not nothing. But of course, you are, as I said, you are going to be willing to throw those guys in to a deal if it means getting Lauri Markkanen. We absolutely understand that. I reckon I'm just trying to figure out here, what I think is going on. Again, this is my just opinion. I just think there's a standoff till August 6th. I don't expect anything to happen here in the next few days. I think there's just a genuine standoff till August 6th, where both sides are kind of looking at each other. Danny Ainge is looking at Mike Dunleavy and saying, really, you're going to prioritize Brandon Podziemski over getting a genuine second star, proven player for Steph Curry? Really? You're going to do that? And then from Mike Dunleavy's point of view, it's looking at Danny Ainge and saying, really, you're going to prioritize a guy who is probably not a top 15 or 20 player in the league. You're going to prioritize that guy over trying to potentially get access to a top-tier superstar prospect in the draft next year. You're really going to prioritize Lauri Markkanen over a genuine chance of Cooper Flagg. That's the standoff right now. And I don't think either team is necessarily going to budge until around that August 6th date. Like that August 6th date, we know it's obviously for Markkanen's, becomes eligible for a contract extension. That is essentially a trade deadline almost, where we know something is going to happen by that point. And in the final 24 hours or something before that August 6th date, one of the teams going to move. Is it going to be the Warriors and Mike Dunleavy saying, oh, we love pods, but yeah, all right, we'll deal pods. Here's pods, couple of picks, maybe Moody as well, and one of GP2 or Looney, and we get Markkanen, right? And it's agonising, and we don't like doing it, but it will make us better, and it prioritises Steph's prime. Or do the Jazz say, yeah, look, we just don't we really don't want to pay this guy. We don't really want this guy on the roster next season, hurting our chances of tanking. Okay, yeah, we'll do the deal for Moody, Payton, Looney, and all the picks you've got. Now, history would suggest Danny Ainge usually comes out on the right side of these negotiations in terms of getting a big package in return for his player. We don't really have too much history in terms of Mike Dunleavy. I mean, he's done that one big trade of Jordan Poole for Chris Paul, which is like a lose-lose trade, a win for the 28 other teams that weren't involved in the trade, you'd imagine. So, we don't have too much history on that. And we have a history that Danny Ainge does pretty well in these negotiations. But I don't know. We'll just wait and see. But I do think, as a result, it's a standoff. I do think it's important for the Warriors. So the trade that I just proposed is like Looney, GP2, Moody, and the Pigs. That would actually be sending out $4.9 million more in salary than what they bring back in. Markkanen's making 18. Those three players combined make 22.9. I think that's a little bit important when you're thinking about if this is a 3-for-1 trade, which it would have to be if Pods is involved as well. Then if it was a 3-for-1 trade, that leaves 2 roster spots open for the Warriors, and having actually a bit of financial freedom or flexibility, I suppose, to go out and get a couple more players on the roster. Like if you do that deal and you're bringing back $4.9 million less, then all of a sudden you can go and sign another veteran minimum free agent. You can go and potentially put Quinten Post on the roster as well. So I think that's important, that if a deal does get made here, and it's a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 trade, you're probably going to see the Warriors take back or give up a little bit more salary. And maybe that means they have to give up more in the trade as well. I don't know. We'll wait and see here. But as I said, I do think right now that it's a standoff with both teams kind of, retaining their stance until we get close to the August 6th deadline, and we'll see who budges or who blinks first. But it's certainly going to be fascinating. And we've still got like 2 weeks till that point. So it seems like time is going incredibly slowly at the moment, because it just feels like day after day we're talking about this thing, and that will be the case still for another 2 weeks. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for listening or watching to this episode. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. Let me know below if you would give up Brandon Bajemski for Lauri Markkanen. Some of the responses I might read out on next episode, which will be in a couple of days. Of course, if there's any more breaking news before then, I'll come back on and give some reaction. Other than that, guys, you can follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter, and I'll see you on the next episode.